In honor of the holidays, I thought I would give a, lighter talk. Today, I'm going to talk about the invention of holiday lights. So I know they're associated primarily with Christmas, but I've also seen Kwanzaa and Hanukkah-themed lights in my neighborhood, so I thought you might all enjoy hearing this invention story. Let's start with how Christmas trees actually got to this country, first of all. German immigrants brought their tradition of Christmas trees to the American colonies in the 18th century. Indoor Christmas trees didn't become common in the United States until a century later. They were popularized in part by newspaper illustrations. In the upper left there, Britain's Queen Victoria and her German-born husband, Prince Albert, gathered around an indoor Christmas tree with their children. And these illustrations went widely throughout the world, including the United States, and it helped popularize the tradition. To light their Christmas trees, families would use candles, but obviously this could be very dangerous and lead to home fires. So along comes an inventor you've probably heard of, Thomas Edison. He was the inventor of the first practical incandescent light bulb in 1879. But more interestingly, for this point, he created the very first strand of electric lights. And during the Christmas season of 1880, his staff hung these strands around the outside of his Menlo Park laboratory in New Jersey, which is shown on the lower left of the slide. It was along a main railroad line between New York and Philadelphia, so train passengers riding by were treated to their first electrical light display as they saw the strands of lights outside the lab. Edward Johnson, who worked for Edison, was inspired to adapt this idea for his home. He strung lights around the Christmas tree inside his townhouse in Midtown Manhattan 2 years later in 1882. That's the photo in the middle of the slide. Quote, setting up a tree by the street side window of his parlor, Johnson hand-wired 80 red, white, and blue light bulbs and strung them together around it and placed the trunk of the tree on a revolving pedestal, all powered by a generator. Then he called a reporter. And the reporter wrote, at the rear of the beautiful parlors was a large Christmas tree presenting a most picturesque and uncanny aspect, wrote William A. Crawford, a veteran writer for the Detroit Post and Tribune. It was brilliantly lighted with 80 lights encased in these dainty glass eggs and about equally divided between white, red, and blue. As the tree turned, the colors alternated, all the lamps going out and being relit at every revolution. The result was a continuous twinkling of dancing colors all evening. One can hardly imagine anything prettier, unquote. These lights attracted crowds of people who stopped to peer through the windows at this glowing marvel. Johnson's Christmas tree lights were indeed ahead of their time. Electricity was not yet widely available nor widely trusted. Note that Edison, George Westinghouse, and other inventors began introducing practical electric power systems in the 1880s in cities and towns. But even as late as the 1930s, only a small percentage of rural areas in the United States had electricity. Some credit President Grover Cleveland with helping to spur the acceptance of indoor electric lights. In 1894, President Cleveland requested that the White House family Christmas tree be illuminated by hundreds of multicolored lights, electric light bulbs. This is seen here on the upper right, not in color, obviously, as it was before color photography, but it's 1894. About 2 decades later, on Christmas Eve, 1923, President Calvin Coolidge walked from the White House to the ellipse and pushed a button that lit the first outdoor national Christmas tree with about 3,000 electric lights. And this is shown on the upper lower right here in this picture. This tradition continues today along with the annual U.S. Capitol Christmas tree lighting, which started in 1964, so fairly recent, and the annual National Menorah lighting started in 1979. While Edison and Johnson may have been the first to create electric strands of light and use them for decoration, it was Albert Sadaka who saw a future in selling electric Christmas lights to the general public. The Sadaka family owned a novelty lighting company, and in 1917, Albert, then a teenager, suggested that its store offer brightly colored strands of Christmas lights to consumers. By the 1920s, Albert and his brothers organized the National Outfit Manufacturers Association, a trade association. Albert also earned 4 patents himself related to Christmas lights. You can look up a copy of that. Its members of this association cornered the Christmas lights market until the 1960s. And in the bottom of the picture in color, you can see an early box of those lights from the 1927. As cheaper holiday lights came on the market starting in the 1970s, largely due to overseas manufacturing bringing costs down, Americans increasingly decorated the outsides of their houses and workplaces with lights as well. People competed with ever bigger displays. A pop cultural favorite down in the bottom there is from the 1989 National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, in which the Hallelujah chorus plays as Clark Griswold, by actor Chevy Chase, finally successfully turns on the 25,000 incandescent lights draped on and around his house. Seasonal holiday lights extending from Halloween through Hanukkah, Christmas, and Kwanzaa, and more really boomed thanks to the invention of practical LED lights. While limited colors of LEDs have been used in industry since the 1960s, primary credit for wide practical use is often given to inventor Shuji Nakamura. He was inducted into the US National Inventors Hall of Fame for his work on high brightness blue LEDs that led to the development of white and then a full spectrum of colored LEDs. Starting around 2000, decreasing prices and increasing availability of LEDs, which you may be familiar with now in your homes, made them more practical for consumers. Not only do LEDs come in a wide variety of fun colors and use a fraction of the energy of previous light. At this holiday season, I hope you'll enjoy looking at the colorful light displays and thinking a little bit about the history behind them. So